We are always delighted to have new people join us here at City Club. We have 3 new members today that I'd like to introduce. When you hear your name, new members, please stand, and after you've all stood up, we will welcome you. Our new members are Spencer Ehrman, Erica Hadlock, and David Lafitz. Would you please stand up? Welcome to City Club. We are really fortunate in Portland to have great corporate citizens that help make these programs possible. Our quarterly sponsors for this quarter are Girding Edlin Development Company, LLC, and McEwen Gisvold, LLP. Please join me in thanking our quarterly sponsors. Our program today is the annual Soapbox Forum entitled Rant 3. This is our opportunity to hear 3 local media figures with diverse points of view let loose on local and national politics. We have absolutely no idea what's going to happen today. Our first person will be, and speakers please come up as you hear your name, Scott Moore, who thinks he has the swellest job in all of Portland. He is the news editor for Portland Mercury, focusing on city and state politics. Next, Jack Ohman. Jack is the editorial cartoonist for the Oregonian and has been in that position since 1983. Jack's cartoons are syndicated by Tribune Media Services to 329 newspapers in the United States and abroad. And finally, Victoria Taft, a former Rose Princess, a radio talk show host, formerly on KXL, now on KPAM AM, where she has hosted talk radio for the past 5 years. Now, our format today will be that each of our presenters will speak for about, or will rant for about 5 minutes. And then we will take input from the audience. And I say input because it's a different format than usual. You won't be asking questions. What you'll be doing is giving them one word to react to. You can direct it to the entire panel, or you can direct it to one. And those of you who are normally too shy to ask questions, this is your chance. All you have to do is say one word to get our panel going. So, shall we begin with Scott?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, thanks everyone. Thanks City Club for inviting me and all 3 of us, and thanks everyone for coming. I guess I should start off by saying I'm a little nervous. This is, so you'll have to bear with me. This is really a first for me. Not public speaking, but still being sober after noon. Which is of course a joke because I'm completely wasted right now. But I feel good. I feel very comfortable. This is exactly the demographic that I normally write for. And so I'm sure you're all big fans and you're used to the kinds of things that I talk about.
You know, baby boomers are older than they look.
Right. So no, really, this is a complete first for me because as a journalist, I strive for complete objectivity, and I strive to not include my opinion in anything that I write. I can't imagine, I'm being serious, I can't imagine ever inserting my own opinion into anything that I write or say. So I'm really not used to this, but I'll give it a shot and see how well I do forcing my opinions on everyone. So, what I wanted to talk about, and Victoria, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder here, is this is what I wanted to rant about.
Horn?
I'm sorry. I almost brought an air horn, but I decided that would be rude. Is that there's a little known fact, but this happened last year, that the homosexuals, the Mexicans, and the communists all finally joined forces to destroy America's culture. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
What culture?
What?
Destroy what culture?
America's culture.
Oh, America's culture.
I read it on a blog somewhere. No, that's, of course, I'm kidding. I love, in fact, if I could, I would be reborn as a gay Mexican communist, if only to be Victoria Taft's worst nightmare. I'm glad you laughed, Victoria. Thank you.
Oh, you don't have to go that far to be my worst nightmare, really.
Yes! Score! No, seriously, this is what I want to talk about. And no more jokes, I promise. Not that they were funny anyway. But what I wanted to rant about is Portland, you are too damn nice. You are pathologically, cripplingly, frustratingly polite.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And I say this I say this as a victim of it because I'm very polite. I try not to piss off anyone ever. I don't want to be offensive. But it's frustrating selfishly as a journalist because whether you like it or not, a lot of journalism revolves around conflict, and it revolves around getting people to talk trash on other people or things that they're dissatisfied with. And that is extraordinarily difficult in this town. People will come to us with complaints about something, and then as soon as we start asking them for more questions, they all start clamming up because no, they don't want to rock the boat, they don't want to make anyone mad, they don't want to upset their neighborhood association or whoever it might be. But in a larger sense, this is also damaging to the city as a whole, and I'll give you some examples of how that happens. What this culture of niceness has done to Portland has given it a rice paper thin skin. Everyone is very, very sensitive, so that when there are real conflicts, real unavoidable confrontations, people flip out. They don't know how to handle it, and it comes out in really ugly ways. Like, everyone knows somebody who's always smiling and is always happy and always even keeled, but the one time they get pissed off, it's the most uncomfortable thing in the world to see because they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to act angry. And it just makes everyone uncomfortable and nothing goes forward from there.
You should have grown up in Minnesota.
I
You don't know nice, buddy, let me tell you.
Yeah, true. My colleague's from Minnesota, and she's not nice at all. But this affects city policy. Like, if you look at the recent issues over the Portland Development Commission and the Charter Review Commission. Is that better? Right. Last summer, Commissioner Randy Leonard started pushing for an audit of the Portland Development Commission's land dealings at 3rd and Oak. I'm sure you all know about it.
He's emblematic of nice as well, is he not?
He's actually one of the nicest people that you will ever meet.
He is.
But he started pushing on this because it was a deal that looked really pretty shady. It looked like a cover-up of a city agency giving away about a $2 million piece of property to a private developer. Whether that happened or not, whether it happened that way or not, it still looks bad. So he pushed for an independent audit of it. The mayor's response was that it might hurt the PDC's feelings. It might look as if we don't trust them. Or it might look as if we don't have complete faith in them. They work hard, and we don't want to offend them. With the Charter Review Commission, something very similar happened. There were obviously the commission has put forward their recommendations, and I actually promised myself I wasn't going to utter the words Charter Review Commission because I didn't want to lose an already disinterested audience, but. There were, some would say there are certain problems with the recommendations that they're pushing forward, and there are people who publicly want to express that, and there are people on Portland City Council who would like to express that they are not entirely pleased with these recommendations. The response, and in fact the public response at some of the Charter Review Commission meetings, actually is anybody from the commission here today? Maybe you can speak to it? No? Then I'll just make it up.
I know you're out there. We can. Yeah. I know you're out there. We can hear you zoning.
They felt personally insulted that, and not all of them, but there were some members who felt personally insulted that somebody on the city commission would be questioning their work or questioning their process. And David Wong, and I know it's pronounced Wong, so Eric Sten, if you're somewhere listening, you don't need to send me an email up
Make a
here
note of that, Eric.
pronouncing that. It's David Wong, even though it's spelled Wang. One of the reasons that they decided to keep the mayor on the city council, to give him a fifth of the vote of city council, even though he would have all of the executive power in the city, was because not doing that would create something that was too contentious. And it would be un-Portland-like. So the result is, because they wanted to be nice and they wanted to keep everything even-keeled, is that if this is passed by voters, which I don't think anybody believes it will be, would give the city a very, very powerful mayor, all because we just wanted to be nice. I don't think, though, that this is a problem just with Portland. It's, I think, indicative of a larger problem with liberal culture at large. We are all just too damn nice. We pride ourselves on tolerance, on a lack of belligerence, on open-mindedness, and we forget that sometimes niceness and politeness just doesn't get things done. And when we're faced with people who have absolutely no problem scapegoating minorities for all of the country's problems, something needs to change. So, thank you.
My rant today is about viral media lies and disinformation. In preparation for this event, I've had the thankless and Herculean task assigned to myself of listening to Rush Limbaugh. This rant isn't specifically about Limbaugh per se, but he is emblematic of a media culture gone completely berserk. Fox News would run a close second. There are many other media outlets involved, and of course there's a lot of blood on everyone's hands. Cartoonists are not exempt either. I have drawn a lot about this stuff, and it makes me ill to think about it. Here's how it works. Someone floats a rumor, a lie, or plants a seed. Or they make a mistake. Or they take something way out of context. This week's example and sacrificial lamb is Joe Biden. I am not going to defend what Biden said because Joe Biden has said so many goofy things in the past 20 years that they really defy categorization.
Some of them he's actually written.
And if he had not said Barack Obama was a clean African-American politician, he would have said something else similar to it. So let's take him off the table. But in listening to Limbaugh, who makes so many mistakes per show that it really just ought to be a show unto itself, I have found that he makes so many factual errors that it's just entertaining in a sick way. For example, the great political junkie himself was talking about Senator Susan Collins, quote, of Rhode Island, unquote. Then he said, Senator Olympia Snowe, quote, of Rhode Island, unquote. Now, anyone who reads the paper in a most cursory manner would know that they are not from Rhode Island, they are from Maine. In Limbaugh's case, you would think that someone who is, quote, on loan from God, unquote, wouldn't make so many factual errors. God is perfect, right? And he must read the paper from time to time. That doesn't bother me so much, but what does bother me is his latest high-minded political gambit, which is to refer to Barack Obama as, quote, Barack Hussein Obama, unquote. Now, there are a lot of things, Now, there are a lot of things that one can criticize Barack Obama for. Maybe having 2 years in the Senate springs immediately and fairly to mind. Is noting that his middle name is Hussein really relevant? Did he name himself Barack Hussein Obama? Limbaugh, who loves to go on about the noble cause of Vietnam, never mentions that Robert S. McNamara's middle name was Strange, for example. No, Limbaugh thinks it's cute just to keep repeating this asinine mantra. Limbaugh stated the other day that it was ridiculous for Hillary Clinton to run, quote, as a mother, unquote. Why? Chelsea Clinton would agree that Hillary Clinton is indeed a mother. Last week on Fox, it was asserted that Barack Obama had attended a madrasa, a Muslim school in Indonesia. Okay, so let's say he did. Was it a Muslim flight school? Was he studying bomb making at 6? Or was it just a kindergarten? Happily, this rumor spread all over the mainstream media nerve ganglia. At CNN, a typo on a screen turned Obama's name into Osama. So there was a bunch of blowback from that. Oh, and in a side note, Fox News declares George W. Bush the winner of the 2000 presidential election, which was a decision to call the election made by his cousin, John Ellis. Small world. And so that was virally spread, and suddenly George W. Bush is the presumptive next president, and Gore is a loser crybaby who conceded too soon. Well, in 1992, it was happily reported as a rumor that there was a rumor that Bill Clinton was photographed burning an American flag as a student and that he went to Moscow, which was true. So did Richard Nixon, a noted past Republican. No such photograph existed. A rumor of a rumor. George W. Bush's campaign delightedly spread the rumor that John McCain had, quote, black children, unquote. Not that it would be relevant, but it was spread in South Carolina during the pivotal presidential primary in 2000. I apologize for even saying the phrase, quote, black children, unquote, as pejorative. It sickens me to do so, but it illustrates a point. Of course, the very moral senior GOP senator from South Carolina had actually fathered a child out of wedlock. Probably would have been inconvenient to note that in 2000. Many advisors virally asserted that McCain was, quote, nuts, unquote, from Vietnam. He's not stable. Poor John. This also happened to Senator Bob Kerrey in 1992. Oh, you know, he's unstable from the war and his experiences. Swiftboat Veterans for Truth. Say no more. And Kerry said no more. He just sat there. Kerry tells a joke. If you see it, everyone knew what he meant, that the president is not smart. Not the veterans, the president. Howard Dean. Wow, he raised his voice at a rally. He's nuts too. People who raise their voices are nuts. Out of the race. Jerry Falwell essentially asserted that Bill and Hillary Clinton were murderers and drug dealers. Al Gore and the internet. Al Gore never said he invented the internet. He said he introduced legislation that helped create the internet, which he did. Oh, now it's an established fact that Al Gore invented the internet. It's a media fact because it reached the critical mass of repetition. We all know the Oregon political rumors, some long established. Are they true or are they viral? Before Watergate, many transgressions, particularly personal, were not put in the paper. After Watergate, anything goes, anything. Was Ray Donovan, a Republican and labor secretary in the Reagan administration, in the mob? Sure, it's a rumor. He's being investigated for it. Must be true. He once plaintively asked where he went to get his reputation back. Now we have the spectacle in Washington of a trial involving who planted a rumor, and more specifically, who denied planting a rumor. A rumor is not the truth. A rumor is bad enough. To create a rumor is a travesty. To report on a rumor is absurdist, and, I hesitate to say, a caricature of truth. Thank you for the rant.
Hi, I'm Victoria Taft. I'm the token chick, the token conservative, delighted to be here this afternoon, and the only person apparently who's going to now defense some of the misconceptions and untruths just told by my fellow brethren over here. First of all, delighted once again to be here. Madrasa came out of the Hillary Oppo research camp. In fact, I'll ask Terry McAuliffe. I'll ask Terry McAuliffe about that because I'm going to talk to him today. We'll see what he says about it. I am. Yes, me and Terry McAuliffe. Wait. I did want to say something about being fair, and I think Jack hit on being fair. I think that is something that we need to take into consideration as talk show hosts, as political cartoonists, as well as people who write opinion pieces in local media. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was the fact that fairness exists in the eye of the beholder. If you're a Democratic persuasion and you run in the ruling class in the state of Oregon, here you are. Fair is what they think is fair. It doesn't necessarily mean what the rest of us think is fair. And here are some examples. I think that there is a mindset that because of you're of a particular political persuasion that, we're on God's side. We only mean the best for you, but you leave behind democracy and truth when you do that. For instance, we see unfolding before our very eyes examples in the state of Oregon in which we have our elected officials, of which most of them are Democrats, and they won fair and square. Nobody's going to say that they stole it and were selected, not elected. They were elected, and this is what we see before us. We see the Portland City Council now saying as of recent revelations, that they were going to have a clean elections campaign. And in so doing, we were going to take away big corruptive influences in Portland politics, and we were going to do this by then outsourcing the cost of their campaign to the taxpayer. And what's the net result? We have now, instead of big-time corrupt politicians, we have small-time corrupt politicians running away with the money, an entirely foreseeable event, and one that, of course, most of us saw coming, and in fact, it happened the first time out. Now, why is this a bother to me? Well, was this done in a democratic fashion? Well, I suppose if you think that sidestepping the charter of the city of Portland is a democratic way in which to do things, when it calls for a vote of the people to change the charter so that the people end up, footing the bill for your campaign, but the Portland City Council didn't do that. No, because in their wisdom, we know better than you. We decided that, these folks did, that it would be better to have the public finance the campaigns, get used to the idea, and then, according to charter, they'll be able to vote on it. That is an arrogance that bespeaks the kind of insularity that I think that we can do a lot less, we can have a lot less of in Portland and in Oregon. I've grown up in Portland. I checked out for like 15 years and went down to San Diego, grew a brain, and came back and said, what happened to my state? What happened to Portland? There are the folks who've been here for years and years and years. The Kogans are among them. I've been at your house. I don't know if you remember that. I went to Washington High School, was at a meeting with Ben Padro at your house some time back, and God bless rest his soul. And I'm delighted to see some of the same people who have been in the movers and shakers, still the movers and shakers, but somebody came in and, stole Portland, stole the soul of Portland, and they've hijacked it and they've outsourced it to Howard Dean. I have no idea what happened. Furthermore, let's talk about fairness. Let's talk about some of the examples of the voters of Oregon and Portland as well, passing measures that are bedrock constitutional, right as might kinds of things, only to have them second-guessed by the likes of our elected officials in Salem. Measure 37 comes to mind. We have, in this state, some people may think it's the best thing since sliced bread, SB 100, which passed in the Oregon legislature years and decades ago, and was never funded, but then there's another issue. And one in which they said, well, this will be replicated throughout the country. No one has ever replicated our land use policies in this state, and there's a very good reason for it. It is because you steal property from the very people who own it. If you are without private property rights, you have nothing to protect. You have no rights. You can have your sex act political speech on your own property until they take it from you and zone you out. That's, mixing metaphors there and things that have been, bizarrely decided here. But let me go back to Measure 37. Right now, we have a 61% plurality who voted in favor of Measure 37, giving people the rights that they had on their property at the time at which they bought it. What is wrong with that? 61% of the Oregonians said, you know what? That's a good idea. It is, one of the first 10 amendments of the U.S. Constitution is private property rights. This is a bedrock constitutional ideal upon which our country's built. Measure 37 makes sense, as did Measure 7 before it, when a plurality of Oregonians voted for that. And what do we have taking place right now in Salem? The very dismantling of Measure 37, private property rights in the state of Oregon. Why is that? Because we have people in Salem, more often of the blue persuasion, who believe they know better than the people who voted in the election. And it is their considered opinion that you didn't know what you were doing when you voted in favor of Measure 37. You didn't know what you were doing. Well, they only thought it was about Dorothy English. I'm here to tell you that is just nothing but hubris. Of course it was beyond Dorothy English. Of course it was. This is all about private property rights. This is about being able to use the property as you were supposed to get with the time that you purchased the property. This isn't about Dorothy English. She just happens to be the poster child. Did you know it was beyond Dorothy English when you said yes on Measure 37? Show of hands. I'll bet you did. They don't think you did. They think you're stupid. Then we have another example. We've got several examples here. We've got, in addition to the Clean Elections campaign, Measure 37, let's go to physician-assisted suicide. I don't agree with physician-assisted suicide. The voters of Oregon said, we believe in a physician-assisted suicide. I don't think that you ought to involve physicians in your suicide, but okay, it's the will of the people, fine. Twice, they said, fine. Who dismantled it? Who attempted to dismantle it? Well, conservatives in Washington tried to dismantle it, as well as the folks in Salem. I mean, for crying out loud, the people have spoken. Shut up, leave them alone. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about rights. You're not dumb, you know what you did. I may not agree with the vote you made on Election Day, but you have every right to say it. And you know what? These people, we're the government. Those people are supposed to have our backs, not stab us in the back once they get back to DC or in Salem. We have in the city of Portland, county of Multnomah, time after time in which we have been forced to pay for and be stuck with the transportation projects that have been voted down by the people. Twice. Light rail's been voted down in Vancouver. Twice. Light rail was voted down in Clackamas. And what do we have? We have light rail going out to Clackamas. We have light rail in a basically extortion plot going to Vancouver. Yeah, I meant that very willfully, saying extortion, because that's exactly what this is. Look, if you want to get rid of folks getting all crammed in together, allow them to drive their automobiles such that they can get to the house they can afford to buy, such that they can get to the job they will now get because they've got a vehicle to get them there. Light rail doesn't go everywhere. It's a fixed rail thing. You go from point A to point B, and if you're lucky, you can get a bus going to where you need to go. But the biggest energizer of freedom in this country is, especially in the West, is the automobile, because that allows people to find and get a place where they can drive and they can afford a home. If you're in the city of Portland, in the Tri-County area, the cost of homes is going out of sight. 8% over since the last year, December to December. Now that's a chunk of change. My paycheck didn't go up by 8%, but if I wanted to buy a house, it would go up. If you can allow people the automobile, and you could probably pay for an automobile for every poor person, unemployed individual in the city of Portland, and still come up less than what you spend on light rail. And they would have freedom. I resent having to spend tax dollars on something that does not do what it says it's going to do, reduce congestion, it doesn't reduce pollution, it basically hijacks the transportation dollar. And why is it that Rex Burkholder, as I'm told today, had his transportation plan sent over to DC only to have it sent back going, hey, yo, Rex, love you, mean it, pal, but guess what? It doesn't include any roads. Who's paying the taxes around here? The people, the transportation taxes are paid by car drivers. And I resent the fact that, nobody pays attention to me. Nobody gives me an extra one, an extra lane of traffic. Talk to people who pay income taxes in the state of Oregon and live in the state of Washington, and they can't get an extra lane. Give me a break. And then, of course, there's a sweetheart deal to which Scott alluded earlier with respect to the PDC. Well, let's talk about Homer Halliburton Williams, shall we? And the sweetheart deals there, the $500 million in subsidies in SOA, and nobody's talking about it because it's just on the, you talk about folks, with black, your so-called black budgets, the stuff you can't see. What about the SOA budget? What about the black budget there? I'm out of time. Thank you very much for your indulgence, and I'll be here to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks for the rants. Our first word will be uttered by board host Ron Paul. Ron is on the City Club Board of Governors. He is chair of the Agri Committee, and in his day job is that he's a civic consultant. Ron.
Do we all respond?
This specifically will be for you, Scott, and for Victoria, but Jack never hesitates to chime in, so I'm not worried about it. It's a hyphenated word with the permission of the chair. Habitat for urbanity.
I don't even know what that means.
But Jimmy Carter's right in the back, so I'm sure.
Yeah, wait, Habitat for Urbanity?
Can I take that? I don't know what you mean either, but I'm going to take it and run with it.
I'll allow it.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate
welcome.
that. What a gentleman. I do appreciate it. Here we have in the city of Portland, we have an affordability issue with housing. And it gets to the point now where we are so expensive, the city is so expensive in which to live, that we have now resorted to paying poor people to either stay or come in. That is serious. That's a serious problem.
I actually don't. I just came. I spent a week in Fresno, California, and if anybody read my column this week, you know what I think of Fresno, California. The cost of living there is more than it is here in Portland. It's not expensive to live here. Houses in
Are they
Fresno.
paying people to live there?
If they did, that would be insane because nobody should. I mean, maybe they do. You'd have to get paid to live in Fresno, but it is actually more expensive to live in a crap hole Central California town, and way more expensive to buy a crap hole tract home in Fresno than it is here. I don't buy the argument that everyone's getting. I mean, there are certainly issues with people being driven out of the city's central core, which I definitely have a problem with. I think we need to keep a mixed income in the city center, but there are ways to do that without paving the entire thing and putting cars everywhere.
Just quickly, I think one of the main problems with American society, and this is not an original observation, and Charlie Hales would happily hand out this book by a guy named James Howard Kunstler called Geography of Nowhere. And it was about how we're becoming more and more stratified in society because we don't live together. People who make $150,000 a year live in their neighborhoods, and people who make $50,000 a year live in their neighborhoods, and people who make $20,000 a year live in their neighborhoods, and we've gotten to the point where we don't have to interact with each other. But at the turn of the century, people were, wealthy people were living essentially, the stratification was much closer because, and we all interacted, and there was a certain amount of distrust that was alleviated by that, and so that's all I have to say about that.
Mike Burton, City Club. Victoria, right on 37. After all, we stole this land fair and square from the Indians, and we should be able to do what we wanted with it. This is a question, Jack, you can exempt yourself from this if you want, but
Thank you.
It has to be 2 words, I'm afraid, but it's the Oregonian.
Oh, God.
I wish there was
Mike.
something. Yeah.
Go, Scott, go.
Wait, yeah, I don't. I mean, this is no. This is me being nice.
get to
This
go
is
last.
no personal slight to you, Jack. I think your work is phenomenal. I don't. Here's the biggest thing I can say about the Oregonian is. I don't understand what they're doing. It's not that I hate the paper. It's not that I love the paper. It's that I have zero opinion about the paper, which says a lot for the state's largest daily. And actually, no, I do have a lot more to say about it than snoring noise. The editorial board blows my mind consistently. I'm not sure whose opinions they're listening to, but it's not Portland's. It's not. It's not anybody I know. That's for sure. And maybe not here as well. I don't. It's okay. The paper seems like a joke. They have a wide open opportunity. They're the biggest daily paper in the state. It's right there for them, and they drop the ball every day.
The Oregonian, this is a prescription for improvement that I've made over the years, is the so-called newspaper of record, to which I always add to that. And this is a newspaper for the entire state of Oregon. Okay. The Oregonian is pretty much the only thing in the state of Oregon. And they skimp on enterprise journalism, investigative journalism. They've done a lot more in recent past, and I'll give them their kudos for that. But they need to do more, because they are the newspaper of record, like it or not, and they should act like it. They should be a better corporate citizen, and I don't mean that in terms of dollars and cents. They should pay a little bit more attention to their editorial bent. They seem to be institutionally biased. Whoever's in power, they're the
so
greatest
conservative.
person in the whole wide world. They have no soul. and their sports section totally sucks. Jack?
We just won the Pulitzer Prize for editorial writing last year.
Yeah, we knew that was coming.
This week, we won the George Polk Award for investigative reporting, which is one of the most prestigious investigative reporting awards journalism awards in the country. We've won the Pulitzer Prize for public service. This is just in the last couple of years. Now, every newspaper in this country is challenged. There are a lot of forces out there that are challenging the economic base of newspapers. But the fact is, the Oregonian, like every institution, ebbs and flows. And I think that we are on a flow. We have done, I think, excellent journalism in the last 15 years under the leadership of Sandy Rowe. We're not perfect. But I think if you look at newspapers across the country, I think we're one of the very good regional newspapers in the United States. And I have absolutely nothing to apologize for the Oregonian. And I think we've got...
Ted Kay, City Club member. Taxes.
I went first last time. I think, Victoria, this seems like your issue.
Oh, well, sure, why not? Whenever the subject of taxes is brought up, I always get a lot of phone calls from my listeners. I do have some listeners out there. According to the Secretary of State's office, I have only 4 listeners, so I'm always looking for 5. The subject of taxes comes up, and I always have to ask the question, what have you done to get some efficiencies in public office? I mean, you know, the first thing that they did when they won election was, in the state of Oregon certainly, and certainly on the national scale, was to just run and say, we're going to do without this, we're going to raise this tax, we're going to raise this tax, we're going to raise this tax, we're going to raise this tax. And, you know, even... you know, big-hearted blue Oregonians have to say to themselves, wait a minute. I mean, why don't we open the prison that hasn't? Why don't we operate the prison that hasn't been open yet? How about if we decide whether or not we really need the state to be in the rum running and numbers businesses? Perhaps we ought to take a look at these things and effect some efficiencies before going to the, I think, overly taxed Oregonians and saying, look, we really need your money, and we're really going to do it right this time. Please believe us.
Taxes. Let's see, I owe $19.5 to the feds. They're bad, they're really high. That's all I have to say about taxes, so. I promise I'll pay, though. So.
It's okay, Jack. Yeah. It's all right, Jack. I got pop bottles. I'll take them back.
Okay.
I think talking about state taxes, the last numbers that I looked at in comparison state by state, where Oregon was, we weren't the lowest, we weren't the highest, we were right in the middle. To say that Oregonians are overtaxed, I think it's a provincial state of mind.
Oh, well, I won't take offense at that at all. Sorry. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I do. I really do. I mean, the taxes here aren't outrageous, and taxes in general.
We're the 6th highest tax state in the stinking union. You don't think that's high? We're like one of the.
I don't.
We are. If you include taxes, when you include fees on that, we are the 6th highest.
I didn't get Grover Norquist's memo on that, but no, I hadn't seen. Oh, including what all the
fees. Sure.
Fees.
Fees are. I mean, I still have to pay.
Without the sales tax.
Comes
right.
out of one wallet, same wallet.
Also, we don't have a sales tax. But in a larger sense, I mean, there's no larger sense. Otherwise, it gets into a much bigger conversation about the validity of taxes and how they're required for a civilized society, which they are. So, I'm done.
Arnold Kogan, member of the City Club. My phrase is global warming.
Boy, you're just feeding Victoria straight lines constantly. I hardly feel like a cartoonist up here. Well, I made my daughter go see An Inconvenient Truth before she went to see John Tucker Must Die last summer. I don't think really that there is, much debate anymore about the validity of global warming. I mean, I was raised in a house where my father had a PhD in plant pathology and ran the research department of the U.S. Forest Service, and I think that this administration is essentially engaged in some sort of anti-scientific crusade. And if I know I'm about to get slapped in the face by Victoria, but I think that I've never seen a more willfully ignorant presidential administration in my life. And I was talking to David Saracen the other day about this, and I'm looking back on the Nixon administration as the golden age of American politics now. I mean, here's a guy who started the Environmental Protection Agency. Here's a guy who, did, so many progressive things. There used to be a consensus on fact, and I don't think there's a consensus on fact anymore in the Bush administration. Victoria, you may now hit me over the head with a bottle.
Oh, well. No, but just because somebody doesn't agree with you or believes that, there might have something else to do, and there might be something else having to do with global warming besides man, and when the sun and cosmic rays don't even, are not even included in their modeling, I think there might be an issue with their data. No, I don't think anyone disputes the fact that the temperature has increased by 1 degree in the last 100 years, and that it may in fact increase even more in the future.
Well, if it goes up 4 degrees, then you don't have Manhattan anymore, and I mean, that the fact is that we may well be on a natural cycle, which we're also massively compounding by, pumping all this carbon into the air. And I don't think that there's any real dispute that there's natural warming, but I don't know that that's...
But they don't put it in the equation. I think that's an issue. That's a problem.
I think they put it in the equation.
When I was going to high school in Portland, Newsweek magazine, I'll never forget because I remember seeing this. We're coming out of a mini ice age. And so anything as compared to a mini ice age is going to look even warmer. It's true, it absolutely is. In fact, when I was going to high school, they predicted that we were going into another ice age because we were in a cooling temperature cycle. Because guess what? The Earth has temperature cycles, and it's beyond our scope. It's beyond our ability to change. And I think that's just a mindset of folks that man has everything to say about it, and can be fully responsible for anything that happens. And President Bush is also responsible for global warming and Hurricane Katrina visiting itself on New Orleans. I mean, that's absurd.
Well, he may not be responsible for Hurricane Katrina, but he's certainly responsible for not doing anything about Hurricane Katrina. And he's certainly responsible for having a guy who used to be the lobbyist for the American Thoroughbred Horse Association in charge of the Federal Emergency Management Agency after 9/11. I mean, that to me is willful ignorance.
Here's a good one. Brownie. Good job, Brownie. Good job. No, in fact, let's just talk about Hurricane Katrina for just the shakes of a lamb's tail. I know, sir, you want to ask a question. I just want to say something that I don't see Haley Barbour crying the blues about the ineptitude of the Bush administration, and I know he's an R.
Trent Lott has.
Yeah, Trent Lott. I'm sure Trent Lott has had some fair things to say about the president. But furthermore, I think that when you talk about willful ignorance, when you're the mayor of a city and when you're the governor of a state, and you are so willfully ignorant, and when the president of the United States calls you and says get those people the heck out of there, and you don't choose to do it, and rather
good Lord.
It makes it a voluntary evacuation. I mean, I have an issue with that. That's President Bush's fault?
Well, when you see thousands of people essentially frying on the street in the middle of a swamp on live national television, and they haven't really moved any troops in there or anything like that. Maybe
I'm sorry, but when President Bush tried to take over and when they tried to explain to Kathleen Blanco that you have to ask for the National Guard because that's the way it works in the United States of America under federalism, and she later said she wishes she had sent the National Guard troops and asked for the troops, it's not President Bush's fault. And in fact, subsequently...
Of course it's President Bush's fault.
No, I'm
He's
sorry,
the
there's a little
President of the
something
United States.
There's a little something
and
called the Posse Comitatus Act, my
I am
friend.
fully
And when
aware
the
of that.
president and when the president tried to change the law so that he could, and during a national emergency, invoke a national emergency and remove the Posse Comitatus Act, the Democrats in Congress said, "Oh no way, that is a power grab, Mr. President."
What's your word?
Mike Litt, City Club member. My word is 2 words, Gordon Smith.
Sell out.
Wow.
Pandering.
To who? I mean, maybe we can all agree that everyone hates him. So let's vote for Steve Novick in 2008. I guess that's my rant. Where's Steve? Oh, thanks. I wasted my 5 words.
I think I like Senator Smith. This is what you always say right before you nail somebody. He's a very charming guy.
He is nice.
And he's gone through a lot. And I think he started off with a lot of promise. And I think that he had presented himself as somebody who was very much in the Hatfield tradition. And I think that some of his handlers have overhandled him. And I think that there's enough blame to go around on Iraq. But I think that Senator Smith has gotten very, very conscious of his positioning, and to the point where I think he's lost a lot of credibility. I don't think if you say, for example, I voted wrong on Iraq, well, everybody voted wrong on Iraq. I mean, there was a very small, I think, very small at the time in 2002, 2003 to the run-up on that, where people were saying, oh, well, we shouldn't go in there. A lot of the Democrats were totally scared because they get into the position by the Republican Party of being painted as wimps or war wimps or what have you. And, this was the downfall. And plus, I think, quite frankly, the president and his vice president lied flatly. They lied to everybody. And I think that if there's one thing you do not do is you lie about the issues that lead you to a war. You do not, President Kennedy in 1962 did not phony up photographs and go on television and bring the world to the brink of nuclear war. Even, it's a much better pretext for Vietnam than for Iraq. And they won't even say, I was just saying the other day, why doesn't some president say, good evening, my fellow Americans. This war is about oil. We need the oil. We're going in there. We're going to set up 14 military bases in Iraq because we need the oil. At least it's intellectually honest. Just say it. Say the words. Gordon Smith.
Yeah, Gordon Smith, everyone.
Sorry. I knew there was a question in there somewhere.
Mark Bunster, City Club. This one's mostly for Scott, but others can answer if
Yes.
they want. Bogdansky.
Bogdansky, Jeff.
I'm glad that he exists. I'm glad that he is Jack Budansky, who's a local blogger, whose audience is vast, apparently, judging by all of the blank stares and head scratching when Mark said the name. He has 4, I think they're the same 4 listeners to Victoria's show.
Maybe.
Only 4, they're very vocal. Okay, here's the thing about Jack, though. I'm glad that he shares his opinions. I'm glad he has an audience, however small and insular it is. But the man is a teapot dictator who cannot stand it's silly. It feels silly for me to even be talking this much about somebody who sits at their house and writes on their computer to 5 people. But it's extremely irritating because he'll say things and you want to have a discussion about it. You want to be able to disagree. You want to be able to further the discussion in some way. But if you're not echoing exactly what he says, he'll not only ban you from commenting, but if you're as lucky as we are in the Mercury, he'll ban you from ever seeing his site.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
He's that nuts.
That's all. I just want to say I think he's a great guy with a great blog. Not wishing to appear in it.
Law professor, Lewis and Clark, blogger. It's his blog. He can say what he wants. Freedom of speech. It's all good.
I know, that's why I feel silly, but it's frustrating. That's all.
Erwin Mandel, City Club member. Form of government.
Yes, can I go? Great, all right, so everyone knows about the pending vote on changing the city's form of government, right? Okay, and everyone's really freaking stoked about it, I can see. So, wow, I guess I should have something to say about this. So we currently have the commissioner form of government, which I think works incredibly well for Portland. It's, all right, as long as the Mandels are clapping for me, that's fine. I think it does. I think that I'm happy to see that there'll be a discussion about it. Allegedly, there will be a campaign at least. But I think it works really well because we have elected officials who are heads of bureaus. This means that there's kind of a higher bar for who gets elected because you're not just getting elected to represent your constituents, you're getting elected to be a competent manager. And I think that the city, for the most part, the city's voters have recognized that and have put people, sorry Dave, but have put people in office who have those qualities. Dave, you would have been great, I'm sure.
I'm totally in favor of going to a strong mayor. I think that we've just been lucky so far. In the sense
lucky,
that,
though, for a century.
Sometime Sam Adams and Eric Sten are not going to get elected to the city council. And somebody who doesn't know anything about water or surface transportation or something like that is going to get elected. And I mean, I remember 20 years ago, I'm not going to say his name, but there was a guy who really, several people 20 years ago who were on the city council who just didn't have a clue, and they were put in charge of running things. And we had you know, Bud Clark wound up being, I think, one of the great mayors of the 20th century in Portland, Oregon. And he's a lovely guy, and he succeeded only because he's so damn smart, because there was a lot that he didn't know about management to the point where he had to take a couple management classes up at Portland State. I mean, by his own admission, he turned out to be one of the great mayors. But you could wind up with a situation where you wouldn't have that.
Then you could wind up electing a mayor who also doesn't know how to run bureaus. Right. And now he's got all of them.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
At least if you have one incompetent commissioner and he's got the water bureau or he's got something really important,
I think
the mayor can shuffle it out and get it away from baby so he doesn't.
I think we should have 78 commissioners so that, you know, all these people who want to run for things who come in fourth in primaries for, you know, the State House and the West Hills.
Representation? Maybe I could get behind that.
Can I ask you guys something? I tend, at first blush, I tend to go along with a strong mayor, but let me ask you, what do the commissioners, the other commissioners actually, like, do?
What would they do under strong
if they
mayor?
don't run a bureau?
They would handle constituent services, so people would call up and say, hey, I've got a problem with this thing, and then the city council member would say, hey, that's great, I'll send a note to the chief administrative officer and who doesn't have to respond to me at all, but you know, I'll see what I can do. So there's that, and also they propose legislation like a resolution opposing the war in Iraq. So it's a very thick job, a lot to do.
I'm sorry to say that we're out of time. Isn't freedom of speech a wonderful thing? Thanks to Scott Moore, Jack Ohman, and Victoria Taft for sharing their thoughts with us today, and thank you all for being here. We are adjourned.